Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Build Your Purpose podcast. This week, we're joined by the founder of Brand New Story, an entrepreneur, writer, journalist, and former deputy editor of The Big Issue, who's on a mission to transform how brands tell their stories with a keen interest on sustainability. Rachel Savage, welcome to the Build Your Purpose podcast.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Hi.
Hi, great. No, thanks for taking the time. It's great to catch up with you. And we're going to start this conversation the same way we start all our conversations, with the intention to explore what's driving you by asking you, Rachel Savage, what is your purpose?
Well, this is an interesting one because I would say there are two purposes in my life. One of them is my personal purpose, and the other is my business purpose. So, do you a preference or?
I think we go. Why don't we go for? Let's go for both. Why not? It's the Build Your Purpose podcast. Let's cover both. Let's cover both aspects.
And I think part of the work that I do, the first thing I do with people is to help them to articulate their business purpose. So I went through a bit of a journey trying to find mine. Obviously, when Simon Sinek's Start With Why was huge, wasn't it? About 10 years ago. And I used that and came up with to give the feminine a voice in business. But that didn't really feel like that felt more of a personal thing, and like it didn't really do it. So I ended up one day I just journaled, and a purpose, kind of a way of writing purpose, came out. If I apply that to Brand New Story, Brand New Story's purpose is to evolve the story of business as usual from one of corporate greed, environmental destruction, inequity and inequality, to a brand new story of purpose-led brands who transform the status quo, excite their people, empower their customers, and heal this beautiful planet we call home.
Fantastic. That's great. I'm so interested in. No, but it's incredibly articulate, and clearly, obviously, a huge amount of thought's gone into it. And from my side, and what we're looking to do with the pod is explore the journey towards a purpose-led existence, whether it's in business or in your personal life too. And I'm interested in how you implement that change within businesses when you start that conversation with new clients with Brand New Story, for example. Is there resistance to that change? Is there resistance to them transitioning from the status quo, as you said there, to the new age that you're trying to bring through?
I would say that if they're going to do this work, they're normally purpose-led anyway. They need to articulate it. Most business owners will have set up their business because they've seen something in, like, an existing story in the world. That's how I work in the realm of stories. They will have seen a story that isn't working, is broken, is toxic, is damaging the planet. And their kind of disruptive behavior is to come and to create a new narrative for that product or service or whatever it is. So I think most people are open to it anyway. I think some people have their purposes written already, and a lot of them are either purpose statements that are really dry, really businessy, really yuck, or they tend to be all about the business. And so that to me seems like a purpose is something that should be shared, and it's about moving into this kind of collaborative community and creating movement through when you change a story, you create movement in the world. So I think a purpose really is about having a shared purpose that the company and its people and its customers are all looking to kind of change in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in that because when I was at uni, we were doing conservation. We were talking a lot about how you impact change, whether it's at a business level or whether it's within conservation initiatives. And one of the quotes my lecturer gave to me was, "If you're in a room and everyone in the room has the same opinion as you, then you're in the wrong room." And you said there about most people that approached you are obviously already on a purpose-led journey. They're already interested in this. How do you think we could go about engaging businesses and individuals who are maybe closed off to this way of operating because they're not in the room that we're in? They're not sort of proactively seeking this kind of this sort of journey. So how do you go about telling the story to those that are maybe slightly more closed off to it than the ones that are being proactive?
I think there's always an area of their business that the story can support, whatever they're struggling with. I think a lot of employees a lot of large employers rather since lockdown have struggled with attracting people to work for them, retaining them. And I think that by having a purpose, you're going to not just attract employees today, but you're going to attract that new generation that are coming through that really, really want to work for purpose-led businesses. And that is just going to save you a lot of money. It's going to help you create a better culture. The bottom line is going to be better. You know, there's purpose-led businesses do outperform their kind of standard counterparts. But it's about, and I think things like B Corp are great because it's bringing in a kind of a framework for how you bring that throughout your business.
No, it's fantastic because when you're talking about engaging, though, you know, that's where I think the real change is gonna come when we get to, you know, enhance the reach of the story that we're trying to tell. And obviously, you worked at an organisation that has a real core purpose, one that everyone will have heard of in the Big Issue, which is very clear on the cause that it's working towards as well as in how it does it. But I'm interested in how that experience at the Big Issue and being deputy editor, was that when you're based down in Bristol, how that shaped your perception of business going forward.
So I think the interesting thing about the Big Issue is that it was set up originally in London, in the UK, by a guy called John Bird. He did that in partnership with Anita and Gordon Roddick from The Body Shop. So that was very much a fun, you know, like a fun, almost I call it in storytelling, a brand gift from The Body Shop, where they set that up in the UK. So I think that's an interesting thing, first of all, is that it was made possible by probably one of the most purpose-led businesses that are around at the time. Starting work there, I mean, I worked in the Bristol issue, the Southwest Regional issue, and set it up from the word go with the editor who was there. And right from the start, it's a social enterprise. It felt very different to work in. It was a job that as soon as I started it, because it had that purpose, the point that we were just saying, I would literally leap out of bed every morning and look forward to going to work. And it was just completely different to any job I'd done before. And I think when I was there for 5 years, I learned loads. It was incredible. You would get interviews with the Big Issue with people that you would never normally get. So it was amazing for that. But also, I think compared to the other media, if you look at it in terms of that sector, the whole media sector, it was a really lovely paper to work for. It was really cutting edge. There was great quality journalism. And I think that at the time, and still it never quite went out as a magazine like that. It never got over that. And I think there was one time where Mark Thomas, the comedian, came down to Bristol. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, I'm aware. Yeah,
great comedian, and he gave us a free advert for a local cable station, and he wrote this advert for us, and it was all around the principles of the reason the Big Issue is sold on the street is because it's too important to sell in a newsagent. And he said we have to get away from this pity purchase and make it that the magazine is the really great product that people should feel really proud to sell. So I think it was really cutting edge, and I don't think that came through enough. But it after that, I couldn't ever work for a kind of normal business ever again.
I mean, I can imagine, because you said there, you know, you look for, you know, leapt out of bed in the morning, you're skipping to work. It's something that I think lots of people want in their life, but I know sadly a lot of people don't have that in their life. And I'm really interested in the interconnectedness of whether it was the clear purpose and narrative that the Big Issue was pursuing. Was that the key metric, I suppose, and the key kind of ingredient to making it a place that was so special to work in? Or were there other aspects of just the more granular level of personalities, or, you know, culture and with, or people within the business that were bringing the culture? Was it sort of a collective process, or was it, you know, just really filtered down from the fact that it was so purpose-led?
I think for me it was purpose-led. It went from being, you know, 2D jobs to third dimension and beyond. You know, there was something about it that it was so heart-led that it was a joy to work there. And I can remember being offered a role in a newspaper. Somebody asked me to go and talk to them, an editor, about working for a newspaper somewhere, and one of the regionals. And I just, my heart was just not in it. I think there's that big thing. It's about being heart-led. And yeah, it was that for me, definitely the purpose.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're all aware of the big issue. I've seen it, in town over the weekend. People selling it, and I think everyone's aware of it. And that's why I think it's so powerful, because it's got that clear purpose, that clear message. And I know you speak a lot about, being the hero of various stories, and actually who heroes of stories should be, and how brands can reshape the narrative they're telling by basically having a different figurehead to what they're doing. And I'm interested, when brands and businesses who are listening to this, who are thinking about maybe their marketing or how their storytelling and their narrative, who should the hero of your story be, and what can brands learn from your experience with Brand New Story, as well as then what you learned with the big issue too?
I think the important thing to remember when it comes to your brand is that its job is to connect, and to connect you with people and connect people with you. And humans connect through stories. So it's thinking about, when you think about your business and its brand, you think of its story, think of it as having two main characters, the hero and the mentor. Until now, most brands have been the heroes of their own stories. So you can tell this if you look on your website and you have the words we, us, our. If that's the predominant language that you're using on your homepage, then I call this that's being the hero of your own story. This is the difference in website terms between being a shop window or a conversation. So if you use the word we, you're shop windowing, you're just pushing yourself out to the world. But everything changes when you turn that on its head and you make your customer the hero of your story, because then that changes the interaction in language into a conversation, and you become their mentor. You're the person that's helping them on their path to success. And like I said, everything changes when you do that. And I think the digital age, I think more than ever, we're more connected, but more isolated than ever. We need that kind of connection with people. And it's about, if you think about that one person on the other side of the screen looking in, that's who you need to speak to. These go everywhere with us. We're ultra connected. I think one of the best examples of this is the who gives a crap toilet paper. When you reach the end of their roll, they say in the middle, bored on the loo, here's our website. They know what their audience is probably sitting on the loo with their phone bored. And so, that is just classically speaking to that one person. So I think it's about connection. And also when you have connection with people and you have that, if you think they're going online and they're looking about, they've got 6 or 7 browsers open and they're trying to pick the perfect eco deodorant, or I don't know, service-based industry or whatever, it's going to give you the competitive edge as well, because you're not going to look and sound like all your competitors. You're just going to be speaking to them. They'll feel seen, and that connection will be made.
It's so interesting you say that, because where you have to reframe rather than telling my story, we, us. Do you think that is the go-to or the fallback, because maybe it's what's been done in the past and people are reticent towards change, and also the risk potentially of them telling their story in a different way, and they feel like as if the brand isn't the center of the story, that's in one way going to be detrimental to them? Obviously, and we know that that's not the case. But do you think that brands go back to the sort of we storytelling as a fallback mechanism because they're scared of not getting the revenue that they want to get from their marketing?
I think it's the way it's done. I think part of it is because we have moved from the broadcast era into the digital era, so that changes everything straight away. But also I think the traditional approach to brand has been visuals. I think I did it when I set out, everybody, when there's a rebrand that needs doing, everybody looks at the design first. They hire a designer, a web designer, or whatever it is, and they get what it's going to look like. And they're all obsessed about what it's going to look like. And they spend all their budget on what it's going to look like. And then for me, I've gone into clients in the early days and they've said, oh, we spent thousands on this new website and brand, looks amazing, doesn't it? But we now need the words. We haven't done the words, or we've tried to do it ourselves. and we can't, so can you do it? You're like, yeah, well, what's your budget? Oh, we haven't got one. So there was, and it reminds me of this kind of Love Island culture that we're living in, when it is very much about what we look like. But actually, I think we're moving into that time where the purpose and the words should come before the visuals. If you do that, start with your purpose, then create the narrative, then you can give that story to the designers, and then all of those three things create the connection that you're looking for. But I think at the moment we are really stuck, because I think it's such a brand is traditionally a design-led business. So that you could say that is the story I'm here to disrupt, as another part of the story I'm here to disrupt, is to get businesses to think about the words they use first, and get the writers and the copywriters and the content creators in that, rather than simply what a brand looks like.
Yeah, actually, the content of it, rather than the sort of exterior part of it, so much more important.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in an area that I know you've got a real keen interest in, and it's businesses who are navigating that tightrope between greenwashing and green marketing and around sustainability. And I think the narrative and the storytelling there is becoming so much more important, and businesses are becoming more aware of it. There's obviously this time of year, there's delivery vans all over the place. People buying things for Christmas, and there's one brand in particular that, well, I was looking at their van and thinking it's really interesting that the logo of the name of the company is actually a really small part of the livery on the van, but the fact that it's an eco van and it's 90% green was so much more part of their external communication. What do you think brands are doing now that's kind of innovative in the way they're communicating how sustainable they are? And then as a consumer, what areas can we look to that can kind of see through maybe the ones that are doing less than they should do, or less than they might be saying?
I think what I notice when I look around is that brands are taking the credit for all of their sustainability work that they are doing. And actually, for me, the hero of that should be the customer, because they're the ones kind of making that possible. I think there's something going beyond we're proud to be a B Corp. I think there's something about a customer's choice, because every day a customer has to make thousands of different choices. And it's really difficult for us to decipher who's being truly sustainable and who isn't. And you can have products that are in very sustainable packaging but contain microplastics, especially in beauty industry and things like that. And so I think that at the moment there is limited ways that we can really tell who's being honest and who isn't without a lot of homework. I think, things like B Corp and various other things that have come in are useful. But I'd have to say some of the brands that I've worked with, the people have, there's one that springs to mind. So Tabitha James Cron is a hairdresser. She's an organic hairdresser. She's created her own product line and is fastidious in the sustainability angle in all of her products and how she works. And yet there are a lot of products. When I first met her, I had a product that I was using that was sold as sustainable. And when I looked on the ingredient list and read it out to her, there were microplastics, nanoplastics in those ingredients. And so it's a real shock that wasn't being done. But at the same time, she is telling a very authentic story. And I would say that I think the biggest thing people are afraid to do is be authentic and tell the truth and say, actually, we're not here yet, but we're on our way. And I watched a film called Responsible last week. It was part of the Be Local meetup in Bristol. And in there they were talking, Tony's Chocolonely were on there talking about getting rid of child slave labor in the chocolate supply chain. But they're really upfront and honest and saying the chocolate we sell, some of it will have been produced using child slave labor. We can't get in and change that, but we will do our damnedest. And that's the story we're in the process of evolving and transforming. So I think if you're really honest with people about what it is that you're looking to change, then that's kind of better than just greenwashing.
Yeah,
Sorry, that's
no, exactly. People would be, more open to hearing a slightly uncomfortable truth than just being lied to. I think is a really important message
yeah.
for businesses.
I think then they become part of that, helping to create that shift, because you're not getting brands. We live in a carbon fueled business, bottom line profit at all cost society. So it's going to be very difficult for any business to turn up and be able to act completely sustainable, because we're not living in a sustainable world. But if we're in that time, the in between times. So it's about us choosing something that we're passionate about changing and helping to create that new narrative.
Because obviously we've got the green taxonomy alignment, which is coming in 2026, I think, but not mandatory, where companies have to report on their economic activity and how it impacts the environment. But again, most consumers aren't going to read those reports because they'll be 45 pages long and only available.
I think not being able, this is probably this question's probably the one I can answer the most, in the weakest, but I think that is indicative of the problem that there is. It's really difficult it's a really important languaging issue, I think.
It's so difficult to navigate it because, everyone's trying to be eco-conscious and everyone's trying to buy sustainably and look to try and do their bit. But if it's being masked by clever advertising or sort of nuanced advertising, for want of a better phrase, it becomes incredibly difficult. And so I think, from what I've learned from that sort of part of the conversation was definitely to look deeper into what I'm consuming, because it may not be exactly what it says on the tin.
I go to a little bit of a point when I'm about to choose one product. I think making, and I think this is indicative of how all customers are. We know that we need to change every little aspect of our life, and all those aspects add up to possibly hundreds of stories, if not thousands, in each of our lives. From the phones we use, the food we eat, what car we drive, how we get around, and where we live, and all of that kind of stuff. And when I moved into this house, we chose to put bamboo flooring in, and there are thousands of different choices to make. So if your company is choosing to disrupt a story, be really honest about what you're choosing to do. Be authentic, go all in, and decide you're going to do that, because we're going through so many changes. It will keep you sustainable as a business anyway. But it's like we are overwhelmed as people by what to do for the best. And I think the companies that make that the easiest and do things, I keep thinking of B Corp at the moment, but it's difficult to see other ways of there isn't really anything.
It is very difficult, yeah, and I think it's the B Corp question is such an important one, and people will have heard of B Corp, and people maybe be looking into how to do it. And I think what's really interesting is, like you say, that the businesses that are communicating this best and making it the easiest for the consumers to buy into it are the ones doing it right. And the B Corp legislation side of things and the B Corp certification is a huge aspect of that, because it is a badge of honor, I suppose. And so I just want to get your thoughts on becoming businesses that that are pursuing to become B Corp. I know our mutual friend Nick Hunt has just done it with the brewery where I recorded an episode a few weeks ago. How when you're marketing, how can you use something like that, which is so well known? How can you use that to your best advantage when you're telling your story?
I think it's going beyond the we're proud to be a B Corp. I think it takes it's a huge amount of work. It's something that I am pursuing and working towards with my business, because I haven't had the bandwidth. You know what it's like running a business. It's hectic, but it's something that I'm starting to work towards now. And I think it's about, what is it, all of those things that have made it possible? How is it that you treat your employees? How is it that your how do you choose your suppliers? How do you make your products? What is different about them compared to the standard versions in your sector? How can you educate your customers to be able to understand what to look for in a product like yours? And where will it be going? One of my first ever client was a company called When in Rome Wine, and they are now a B Corp. But at the time, they were bringing in craft wine from Italy into the UK, putting it in boxes. And at the time, the inner lining of those boxes could not be recycled in the UK. So the messaging wasn't, oh, we'll just avoid that. It was, these can be recycled in Italy and Europe right now, and we're working towards doing that in the UK. And when about 18 months later, they started being stocked in Waitrose and Harvey Nicks and places like that, they then worked with, there was a partnership with Waitrose and TerraCycle and people that made that possible. So it's now happened. So it's a journey that we're all on to, 2030 and beyond for zero carbon. So it's just about being honest.
Yeah, that honesty point, I think, is such a crucial point, and a really key takeaway for anyone listening to this, that, just be honest with your employees, with your consumers, with your shareholders, with board members, be honest, because no one's perfect, but the companies and the businesses and the organizations that are at least trying to be proactive and upfront about the holes in the plan, so to speak, at the moment. But, we're looking to go and mitigate them. And you've gone on such an incredible journey, and you're now with your own business as an entrepreneur, with telling all these different amazing brand stories. But I'm interested in, you spoke earlier about one of your purposes being, the feminine voice in business. What are the challenges that you've come across, in your journey to being a business owner now that have been sort of pertinent to that aspect of your story of the feminine voice within business?
Well, I suppose when I was thinking about this, I thought I didn't really notice until I had children. So I was working, I suppose my career, I say it started in my early to mid 20s. And I think things just ticked along until I became a mother. And that in some of the best organizations, there would be comments made from managers. There was a little comment made once about us part-timers going off for the day, things like that in, really ethical companies. And also, I think within that, within the working, there were less opportunities as a result. And I think at the age I was just coming into perimenopause. So I was getting really irritated with with various people in life, my boss. And there was lack of opportunity, a lack of that even though I was working for like purpose-led business, there was lack of opportunities for me to use my creative, my creative being, as it were. So I quit. And so I think for me, the business world just came, I came up against a roadblock, and I had children quite late. So I was like 35 when I was pregnant with my first son. And so up until that point, it hadn't really been an issue, although possibly it had, and I just hadn't noticed it, like the frog in the pot or whatever they say. I think as women, we don't notice it. I knew somebody very, very long time ago who lived in the world as male and then transitioned to female, and said to me, you have no idea what a second-class citizen you are as a woman, which really, I was like, what do you mean? It was really interesting to see, because as women, we don't know. It's not, or back then we didn't anyway, I'm talking early 90s when that was said to me. So I think as a businesswoman, the business world is just not great. And then in terms of, and I think when I set out in my own business, I felt, the first few years I became a storyteller, and, I've just been, it feels like I've spent 10 years getting to this point. And it felt like going into battle all the time. It was really difficult. And then, even earlier this year, I got to a point where I just wanted to give up and just stop doing it. And then I had a conversation with a storyteller over in Lithuania, a really lovely guy, who said, did you know that the origin of the word strategy means general in charge of an army? And to me, that just suddenly made sense, that we have all these business strategies, and it's all, the whole world of business is almost come from that background of battle. And that feels like we're heading into a battlefield. And what I really like about the story work is that whole yin yang kind of principle is that with story, if you make yourself the mentor to your customer's hero, then you're essentially bringing feminine qualities. You know, when I think in Greek mythology, one mentor was a character who was actually Athena disguised when giving some advice. So for me, mentor represents that divine feminine, that kind of nurturing, nourishing aspect. And so I think if you have a strategy, yes, you need that kind of going out into the world trajectory and energy, but the story will bring that softening side of it and bring more balance into businesses. So for me, a business is finding that voice, I think, is really important. And I think all of this move into purpose and, you know, we talk about purpose and impact and all of that kind of stuff, and heart-led. And I think it is about bringing love more into business, which is a word that's still quite difficult for a lot of people to say. But I think with women, I looked up some stats on this. There's a lady called Debbie Wasco on LinkedIn. She said that in 2024, 1.8% of all equity investments went to female-founded firms. Like 1.8. That's actually down 2.5% from 2023.
Wow.
But studies show that female-powered businesses generate 35% higher returns than male-led ones. And I don't know, I sometimes wonder if I was a man running this business, how much further along it would be. It is quite interesting.
And what are the sort of metrics for your, when you're answering that question? You know, how much further along would I maybe be? What sort of metrics are you using to answer that question?
I don't know, just sometimes looking at other people who've set up their businesses, you know, at the same time as me and gone into the future. But I don't know, maybe it just takes this long is the other kind of aspect I think of as well. I do think it takes.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. You said there 1.8% investment goes into female-led companies. That's incredible. And do you think the root cause of that is because there are less businesses that are run by women, and that's a sort of it's a kind of simultaneous statistic that it's illustrating that there's not enough investment going into female-led business, but equally the sort of root cause. The problem is that there aren't enough women being, you know, feeling the ability or the confidence or the opportunity, as you alluded to in your previous employment, to go and become leaders in business.
Well, I think it's to do with the investors as well. I think that there are so few female investors as well, because we still have a world where the money and the power sits with men. You know, so I think that it comes from further up as well.
And you think that maybe that there's the situation where, as we spoke about, the sort of resistance to change, maybe, you know, about how you tell your story is the same as resistance to change from the top down. You know, if it is a male dominant culture within the management of most companies, do you think that the different narrative that maybe comes from having female members in leadership of companies, do you think the resistance is coming because it's the status quo and it's what they're used to? Do you think that it's companies that are kind of protective of power? What do you think the reasons are behind this? And then also, what can we do? What can we do to make it more of a level playing field, particularly, as you say, because they outperform a lot of the time. They outperform businesses that aren't run by men. That are run by men.
Oh, that's like a big. I feel like that's
question.
a big old story to solve. That one is. I think it's about giving more opportunities to women. I don't know. Maybe for me, it was that point when I had kids, and I think there is something that happens at that point where we kind of fall off. Well, for me, that you fall off the career ladder. And so I don't know what the answer is, quite frankly. I think there are other people that are eminently more qualified than me to do that.
It's one we've been grappling with for a long time as you know, in business, I suppose. Yeah, if we had the answer, then maybe we'd have already solved it. It's an incredible you know, statistic there that you said about 1.8%. That's really kind of hit home for me, the broader landscape that it operates within.
Yeah, and there's another one of my friends is Eleanor Mills. She runs the Noon platform, which is about women in midlife, and I think also the amount of women in their 50s that give up their job is just astounding. Last week I go outdoor swimming. It's just shut this week, the quarry where I swim. But I was chatting to a woman there, had a very high pressured job, very high powered, in an organization. She was on the board, and she lost her confidence because she started with menopause. And she said, I couldn't finish sentences. I had anxiety around speaking within that kind of pressured environment, because sometimes I couldn't get my words out because of menopause. So she quit. So I think there's a lot to do, you know, like both throughout all of the trajectories of a woman's life, we have a lot of things that interrupt our careers. And
Definitely.
I think it's about looking at ways to take the barriers down at each of those stages.
I mean, like, these sort of changes in life that affect your cognitive ability, how you feel in yourself, the confidence. And when I was working in professional sport, so much of the bandwidth was given to how are the players, how are the employees, how are the players feeling, are there issues in your personal life? And it was such an open conversation where they would have psychologists, they'd have the coaches and the management being really concerned and trying to make sure that the players are healthy. And I took that into my own coaching, where the players would get a wellness questionnaire before each session. How did you sleep? How positive do you, just to get an insight into where they're at, because you can't expect to get 100% from someone that's feeling 50%. But then when I moved from sport into business, into an office environment, that the wellness culture it's lacking so much from that. And I think you're right there. Someone who's got a high-powered job, who's obviously worked hard to get to where they were in life, but because they had a situation where they're going through menopause, they felt they had to quit. I wonder if there was a framework in place within business that is more concerned with how people are feeling, with mental health, physical health. There's things happening in their life that are stressing them out. If we tackled that stigma, do you think that would mitigate that the statistic there of women leaving jobs in 50s? Do you think it's a lack of ability to have conversations that are the root cause of that?
I think there is. And there's another guy that I've worked with a lot called Paul Holbrook from Diary Detox, and he does a lot of work around management, actually, and around the fact that he calls it's accidental management, and where people are promoted into middle management roles because they need more money, and they've been in a job for a while. They're going to need more money. They're going to need to look like they're progressing. And so they're very good at experts at what they do, but they're made managers, but they're not really people person. Yeah. So people. So what happens is then they'll do their job, but the managing is either on the side, or it's something that they're not very good at. They don't like checking in with people and seeing how they are. And he's actually looking to the story he's disrupting is that story of helping people be led by love. And this love thing in business again, where I think if you've got a manager who really loves his people and is sitting down with them and spending time with them, finding out what's going on with them, and adjusting things accordingly, so that they can still be really productive, stopping them going into pointless meetings, stopping them, wasting their time with a million emails they get copied into. If there's all of those things that can happen, and that manager spends time with their people, then I think that goes a long way, because I think business at the end of the day is about people, and it is about those relationships, and it is about those cultures. And I think we just have, we do have quite old-fashioned cultures still in a lot of organizations, and a lot of organizations that are purpose-led do the planet bit, but then don't do the people bit, or, or people do the people bit, but they don't do the planet bit. So I think it's time for all in, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when companies do that and organizations do that, they can unlock huge new potential and new impact from having that approach. Because seeing it in sport and seeing some businesses doing it really well, it creates a culture that's just the sky's the limit in terms of where they can go. And that kind of leads us on now to getting more insights from your journey, and getting some real tangible takeaways that people can act upon with the closing kind of quick fire questions that we ask all of our guests. And the first one is a book that you think should be on everyone's bookshelf.
Oh, so I couldn't decide. I had like 3 that I couldn't decide. I think for a business owner who wants to run a purpose-led business, Anita Roddick's Business as Unusual is really, really good, about how she founded the Body Shop and just how she stuck to her guns, actually, and did everything that wasn't easy but was the right thing to do. You know, everything we've been talking about.
And finally, we ask all of our guests to write a postcard to their 20-year-old self, imparting a piece of wisdom you've learned on your journey to build a collection of purpose-driven advice for us all to learn from. And I wonder if you'd be willing to share yours.
Yeah, mine's a little bit woo-woo. So I have put, dear 20-year-old Rachel, firstly, please know that the voice in your head that tells you all those negative things about yourself is a pesky liar. It is simply the voice of fear. There is another quieter voice, the voice of love. The voice of love greets you with a quieter inner voice that calms and soothes both your body and your mind. Learn to trust this voice and follow it. This voice will lead you to all the good things in your life. It will tell you who your husband is going to be right before you meet him. It will guide you through pregnancy, birth, and the raising of your children. It will also lead you to your life's purpose and evolve from being your inner voice to your outside voice in the world.
Brilliant. That's fantastic advice, because trust your gut basically and trust the process. That's fantastic advice. And Rachel, all that remains is to close out the pod, but I really want to make sure that everybody listening will have been inspired by your story and what you have to say, where can we find out more about you? Where can we find out more about Brand New Story and get in touch with you and pursue purpose in business the way that you do it?
Yeah, so online, you'll find the website is www.brandnewstory.co.uk, and I'm on LinkedIn, Rachel-Savage, on Instagram at the moment as well, Brand New Story HQ. We need to double check that. Feel free to reach out and connect on LinkedIn or Instagram or via the website. People can also book kind of calls to have a look at their story, see how well they're telling it on there.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Rachel, just thank you so much for your time and wisdom and the inspiration that you've given me, as well as, and I'm sure everybody listening. So Rachel, thank you so much for joining me on the Build Your Purpose podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.